Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. It's Friday, which means that it's guide day. We've been all over the country for the last 4 or 5 guide days. We're kind of go to the middle of the country now, and a lake that I've spent a lot of time on, both with a rod and reel in my hand and without a rod and reel in my hand. And that would be none other than Lake of the Ozarks. If you've been following this series on Friday, we talked to different guides from around the country. And one of the things that I've always just experienced and talked to is guys go, man, I want to book that. I'm going to be in the area, but I don't. I want a guy that I know kind of what's up, like what we can do, how it's going to go. So I said, well, I know a bunch of guides and I know a bunch of people who know a bunch of guides. So let's do a show about it. So that's what this is. And this is the first guide day episode that has featured a professional bass angler. We're talking Lake of the Ozarks and Truman Lake guide, a former FLW Tour champion, Elite Series angler, and current Bassmaster Open EQ angler, Casey Scanlon, who plies his trade primarily on Lake of the Ozarks. Like when you're not around the tournament scene, you're guiding. First of all, thanks for jumping on guide day.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're a full-time, what would you consider yourself? Professional angler, full-time guide who dabbles in tournament fisherman, full-time tournament fisherman who dabbles in guiding. A lot of options there, Casey.
No, you could pick any of them. So, but yeah, I started out full-time angler, and, guiding is a great way to supplement my time and, help my income out. So we started doing that maybe, gosh, it's been probably almost 8-9 years we've been doing it. So I probably average, 100 trips a year. Maybe we got back from our last tournament just the other day, and was out on the water the very next day. So
what was it that made you jump into guiding? I know you're Kansas, originally from Kansas, but kind of around that Ozark area. You have a house on Lake of the Ozarks, but talk about what made you go that route. And then do you remember your first day as a guide?
I do remember my first day as a guide. It was pretty memorable. Took a lady out, and she was pretty good at bass fishing. She brought her own equipment. She had a little crankbait tied on, like a little bandit, and she was catching them. She wanted to start using her own equipment after a while, and so she started catching them on that little crankbait. And she was taking a couple off the hook for me, or for herself.
Yeah.
She, got one in the finger. So
passed the barb.
Yeah. Passed the barb.
First guide trip ever.
Yeah. And I had never done the line trick before. Right. And so I'm over there on my phone, Googling it, watching it on YouTube. Like, how am I going to do this? And she's nervous about it. Well, luckily there's another fisherman at the ramp that I knew. It was to the point where I'm going to take her to the hospital, across the street. So he ended up doing the trick for me, just snapped it right out of there, and we went back to fishing. But so now, from now on, if you take a trip with me, I'm going to take your fish off the hook, most likely, especially if it's a treble hook. So
I was down at Mexico early in the year, and that was the same thing. I didn't realize, I was pretty adamant about no, I got it. But then, I didn't realize he didn't want me to take him off because we're in the middle of nowhere in Mexico, and you deal with people who don't take off 100. Well, I don't take off 100 fish a day, but we were catching 100 fish a day down there. He eventually just was like, yeah, they're good to go. But yeah, for most people, especially if you're not used to it, that's a risky proposition. So
yeah, it's kind of nice if you're used to it, having somebody else take your fish off for you. I mean, can't beat that.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the guide scene at Lake of the Ozarks. I would rank, I don't think I would. I think you could rank Lake of the Ozarks as one of the top 5 party lakes in the country. It is right up there with Lake Havasu. If you've never been there, from the major holidays, I can't remember which comes first, Labor Day or Memorial Day, but between Labor Day and Memorial Day, or Memorial Day and Labor Day, it is absolute chaos. It's kind of like the epicenter for cigarette boats. There's a bunch of literally guys who build them down there. They have rallies every single weekend. You've got dozens of restaurants on the lake, tons of big vessels cruising around the lake. What was it? Talk a little bit about the guide scene, though, because outside of the party, it's a lake that has a ton of fish in it.
It does have a ton of fish, and a lot of times, not all the time, but for a lake with a bunch of boat docks and cover, they're relatively easy to catch. So it makes my life as a guide, pretty good. So I mean, they're always biting. We've got a huge population of fish. There's a ton of shoreline here. I mean, a lot of creeks, coves, a lot of places for these fish to hide. So, initially it just was a great way for me to get out on the water and, make a little money while doing it. But, I've been doing it a long time and I thoroughly enjoy it. Like you mentioned, we got, a big lake here, a lot of fish. And you got people coming here for a variety of different reasons. So I get calls from people wanting to, master their electronics or maybe learn the lake a little bit better. They got a lake house down here. They're wanting to learn a few fishing spots maybe. Or I just get a random phone call from somebody that has never been fishing before, never been to Lake of the Ozarks and wants to give it a shot. So you never know what kind of phone call you're going to get, but like I said, it's a good lake and we go out and we catch fish every time. So it's usually a good experience.
What percentage of your guys would you say are, I know you said you're all over the board, but are kind of established bass fishing guys who know you as Casey Scanlon professional angler and want to learn from you, maybe learn how to skip boat docks better, maybe learn how to throw topwater better. And then how many are like complete novices? Like, what would you say the kind of breakdown is as far as, oh dude, I'm in the boat with Casey Scanlon and hi, nice to meet you?
Yeah, it's probably like 50-50.
Okay.
So right now, spring of the year, you got a lot of, you got to be kind of specific with your techniques, whether it's a jerk bait or, a jig, things like that. You got to be, it helps to be a more accomplished angler, I guess it would say. So, this time of year, I get a lot of guys that have a lot of experience fishing. They're wanting to tune up for the season, learn their electronics, maybe learn a technique, get to know the lake a little better. But like summertime, when we have a lot of tourists here, I mean, it's every single day I'm taking somebody out that, when I hand them a rod and reel, they're like, what? I have to there's no button on this. So it's, but you know what? Those usually make for some of the best trips. The expectations aren't huge. And the summertime's a great time to go out and put numbers of fish in the boat. So we go out there, and in 4 hours, they catch 20, 30 fish, probably have the opportunity at like 100, but you're usually telling them that you got one, go ahead and reel him in. So, but it's fun. It makes for a good time.
So it's really, you offer kind of two things, a teaching versus a catching. So you can do everything from the novice angler guide trips all the way up to the experienced angler. And then I would assume that's something that you just communicate with when someone calls as to what they're looking for out of that trip.
Exactly. Just what they're looking for. I ask them, right away, what do you guys want to do on your trip? Are you here to learn, catch fish? What area of the lake are you in? Usually I'll pick them up from wherever they're staying at. They want to learn some guys want to learn a specific area of the lake a little bit better. So I'll, we'll go fish there, but usually I'll suggest, wherever I think they're biting the best, of course.
For those who have never been to Lake of the Ozarks, it's obviously an Ozark fishery along with like a Table Rock or a Grand, but it's rather unique. Kind of just describe the layout of the lake. You mentioned the docks. I think there's something like 40,000 docks on Lake of the Ozarks. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think it's like 44,000 docks that are on the lake, but there's actually a pretty diverse amount of cover. It's not just docks.
Yeah. It really is, like you said, a unique lake compared to a lot of the lakes that we go to around the country as a tournament angler. There's not a whole lot of them that kind of compare too much. So most of the boat docks here are floating docks, and we have a lot of big docks as well, whether they're homeowner docks or marina docks. So a lot of different kinds of structure, a lot of man-made structure as far as brush piles. A lot of concrete in the lake, whether it's anchoring a boat dock down, whether it's a seawall, a boat lift or a ramp, we've got a ton of concrete structure in the lake, which the bass really like. And I like to fish as well. We've got, of course, like we said, the boat docks.
There's 70,000, by the way. I just Googled it.
Yeah, I mean, more than anywhere I've ever been. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any place that can compare to it. And I've often wondered what it would look like out here if every boat on every dock was out at the same time on the water. Because, like, usually when you're out there fishing, like, they're all put away and it's still busy.
Yeah.
So, but you know, and we've even got some grass growing in the lake, mostly bank grass. You know, that's kind of starting to develop the last few years, and so that's good to see. But a lot of rivers, creeks, coves, so a lot to explore here at the lake for sure.
I'm going to throw a picture up here just for those who can't comprehend what this is like. There's just a random picture of Lake of the Ozarks right there, and you can see it is boat dock after boat dock after boat dock, and then giant marinas and big floating, like Casey said, a lot of crazy man-made structure. So that being said, in the summertime, do you even guide during the day during the summertime, or are you doing short morning, evening trips and then night trips?
You try to get out early. Weekdays are always best. Honestly, I don't really even do them on the weekends anymore.
I don't think you can. You've guided during the summer Lake of the Ozarks on the weekend before.
I mean, I get a phone call for it every single weekend.
Really?
You know, I try to talk them out of it. I try to tell them what they're in for. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you want to do it, it's got to be early. You know, I mean, by 10 o'clock on a Saturday, it's pretty much chaos out there.
So like 6 to 10 off the water by 10:15, and you've got a half day in.
Yep. We do a lot of those. Do a ton of half day trips. Usually that's enough. There's a lot of fishing here. Mm-hmm. So you, especially in the summertime, I mean, 4 hours, get out there, whether, you know, you're fishing boat docks or ledges or whatever it is, they're usually biting, and we can get off the water before, you know, if we're more surfing than fishing.
It gets dangerous in a 20-foot bass boat. So do you do the night fishing thing, Casey?
You know, I've done a few trips, mm-hmm. and we do evening tournaments, night fishing tournaments, you know, fairly often.
Okay.
So, yeah, if somebody wants to go out there at night, we can definitely arrange it, for sure. So
are you wanting to promote that or not? Because I have night fished Lake of the Ozarks during the summertime before, actually on like a holiday weekend. And it was one of the top 5 bass fishing experiences of my life.
It's easy at night. A lot of the time, you know, I mean, a lot of the time they really bite. Like when they have a night tournament here, it's like,
yeah,
I feel bad for the fish. Like they're just like, you catch so many of them, you know?
Yeah.
But most of the time at night, it's pretty good. The size is better. I would, but yeah, I'll do some night trips for sure. It's not something I've promoted a ton, but usually there's like a window of time too, that's like the best.
When is that?
Like usually the first few hours, of darkness, and then the last couple hours. It seems like every tournament I've ever fished at night, you'll catch a few that make the team, mm-hmm. in the first couple hours. And then if you don't call everything out from like 4 o'clock to 6, mm-hmm. you know, it's kind of rare, to be honest.
So it sounds like, especially during the majority of the year, like you do full days during the spring, you will do full days in the weekday during it, but it's an in and out deal. Like you get a lot of people are there for the weekend. They want to spend some time fishing. They might be renting a VRBO at the house or have a party or something like that. Boom. You get up early, you pick them up, you go catch your fish in the morning, and it's a half day that's done by 10.
Most of the trips, especially peak year, which for us is different from a lot of guides. You know, right now down south is probably peak guiding season. For us, it's like, you know, June, July, August. You know, there's a ton of people in town, and usually, you know, we do 4-hour trips, and we might do 2 of them in a day. But usually that middle part of the day, mm-hmm. you're better off just to go to one of those lakeside restaurants or the beach or something and hang out, because it's a busy lake. And if you don't, you know, if you're not experienced to standing in a bass boat and dealing with those waves, it's not a lot of fun. I mean, you gotta you got to have a wide stance and try not to fall out of the boat at about noon, you know?
So as a complete 180 from that, the wintertime at Lake of the Ozarks is, for all intents and purposes, a ghost town. Like, it's used by bass fishermen, but that's got to be one of your favorite times to get out there too, during the winter, when there's just a couple other boats buzzing around and the bite is still good then, especially on a number of different baits that you like to throw and that you're really good at.
Yeah, no, definitely. Wintertime bite. The bite here is good all year. It doesn't,
Okay.
we don't really skip a month where it's like crazy tough. You can always catch them. And, you know, and I'm talking about, you know, big waves and stuff in the summertime. You can definitely find a nice, you know, peaceful spot to fish during the daytime. But a lot of those fish are out there in that boat traffic. So we try to stay out there as long as we can, you know.
Yeah. But wintertime, you do all day.
All day, yeah. And I'll do all day in the summertime, but we're going to have to kind of pick and choose our spots a little bit. You know, you can go up a creek and, you know, spend a little bit of time, you know, kind of back in some of these no wake zones and things like that. But, you know, the best fishing's out there where the heaviest boat traffic is, for sure.
Lake of the Ozarks known, you know, James Watson is a worldwide buzzer that's on that. You've got some spinner baits. Topwaters is known for its topwater bite, its buzz bait bite. Is that something that you have people come in that just want to get on a topwater bite on Lake of the Ozarks?
Oh yeah, yep, definitely. That's one of my favorite bites, and it lasts, I mean, a lot of the year. You can catch them.
Really? Like, what would be prime topwater time if I wanted to come book with you for a couple days and just see fish blasted up in the shallow rocks?
Okay, if you want to go blasting up in the shallow rocks, you know, like big topwater,
Yeah.
you know, buzz bait, big glide bait, something like that, October, November, you know, when it starts getting a little bit colder. I mean, that's prime time. Although, you know, like that September time frame, sometimes they, you know, real early, you know, late August can be dynamite as well. But we'll throw a spook or pop R or something like that all summer long. Like, usually on my guide trips, you know, I have to tell them, like, if they're new to fishing, of course, you know, like, okay, there's gonna be like 30 of them. Come up here.
Oh, we lost Casey. He's back. And his audio's off, so he's gonna have to jump out and then jump back in because he's still talking. I'm losing his audio. I got no audio. I don't think he can hear me either. So I'm gonna jump off. I can't hear. I got no audio on Casey. So can I hear you now, Casey? I got no audio. How about now? Nope. Log out, log back in. Here, I'm gonna kick him out of the studio, and then I'll have him log back in. What happened there was someone called him. I think he had his phone. I think he had his phone set up, and when someone calls, it kicks your audio off. Unfortunately, log back in. There we go. But no, super diverse fishery on Lake of the Ozarks. I'm about 5 hours from Lake of the Ozarks, and I think it's a difficult lake to guide on because, and we'll ask Casey about this, but I think it's a difficult lake to guide on or to go out and just catch fish on, even though because there's so many fish. If you were to go there by yourself, having never been there, it's one of the top 5 most overwhelming lakes in the country. Sorry about that, Casey. I meant to tell you, put your phone in standby before someone called you.
All good.
But true on that. One of the most overwhelming lakes if you've never been there before and don't understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yep. And I think that's where, like, a lot of the calls I get from fishermen that are experienced, you know, like, it's a tough lake for some people. Like, it's a lake that, you know, if you don't have a ton of experience with boat docks, I mean, that right there is overwhelming. Which one to choose, you know, how to kind of narrow that down is very hard. The amount of cover in here and the amount of water is overwhelming for sure. So I think that's why I get some of my phone calls, is just to kind of help, you know, people break it down and make it a little easier for them to understand.
Wrap it up. You were talking about the topwater bite, and it sounded like you were telling an awesome story. We just couldn't hear you.
Yeah, they these fish school a lot down here, and
Okay.
I get a lot of calls in the summertime, and I've got to give them a little pep talk and like some warning when we get to these spots, because usually these fish come up schooling and they're just like staring at the water while it's foaming, and I'm like basically yelling at them like,
Cast.
to reel their stuff in and make a cast and get it in there. So I try to let them know what's about to happen. Usually when we pull up to some of these places, like whether it's a boat dock or a point or whatever it is, there's usually places that, when you pull up and, kind of the boat wakes settle, those fish are going to come up, and then they don't always stay up on top of the surface for a long time, but you've got an opportunity to throw your bait in there and get a bite real easily. So great topwater bite here at the lake all year. Pretty much you can pretty much count on it from late April all the way through November.
Wow. All right, let's switch gears. There's a lot of other species in Lake of the Ozarks as well. I think it is also one of the most underrated crappie lakes when it comes to catching, not necessarily giants, but just solid schools of 12, 11, 12, 13-inch crappie. Is that something you also dabble into? I think is, what is it, 25, 15, the limit for guys?
Yeah, 15 per guy.
15.
I believe we have a 9-inch limit. I usually if they're only over 10, but
yeah,
we don't. We've got a ton of crappie in the lake, more than I think the population's just getting bigger.
really.
Like you said, there's the amount of 10 to 13-inch crappie in the lake is phenomenal. Usually if you catch one, that's what size it is, and there's big schools of them. So I love to target them. They're one of my favorite. Like if I was to go out fishing today, I'd probably go crappie fishing.
I'm right there with you.
So, but we love catching them on a jerk bait. Of course, shooting boat docks is probably one of my favorite things. It's hard to do on some trips, but I've taught a lot of people how to do it.
Explain what that is for those who don't know.
It's basically taking a light action rod and you're bending it in half and almost shooting it like a bow and arrow. You're grabbing a hold of the crappie jig and you're bending that rod over and aiming it for a hole in the dock. Basically, there'll be holes in the dock floam underneath swim platforms, where you'll have a small window to shoot that jig underneath, and the crappies really, really love getting in the shade of these bigger boat docks. So being able to do that really helps you a lot of different times of the year here catch more fish, because if you make the right shot underneath there, it's almost guaranteed to get a bite a lot of days. So a lot of guys want to learn to do that, and I found that having the right rod makes a huge difference in that. So, and finding one that you're comfortable with. So, but had a lot of people do that with me this year, and I was actually impressed by the results. You never know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys did really well doing that. So, but
is that a year-round deal, or is there kind of a crappie season that you prefer to target those?
It's better at sometimes than others, like the fall is especially. But you can do it all year.
Okay.
The crappies here, there's a lot of them, and a lot of those bigger schools I feel like they live close to the big boat docks. Sometimes they'll be shallower, sometimes they'll be out in front of them in open water, suspended, or around the brush associated with them. But like that, those bigger boat docks are kind of their home. And so usually you can always, shoot a jig underneath there and get your bait in front of the biggest bunch of them,
Do you offer cleaning services?
If you catch them, I'll clean them. I don't
Really?
Yeah. I can make pretty quick work of it. If we got 100 of them or something,
I mean, if you got 2 people at the boat, you're probably maxed out at 45.
Yeah.
You are maxed out at 45.
Yeah. So, I'll take a little extra time to clean them. They usually make it work.
So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking a combo trip. I'm there for the weekend. You do 2.5 hours of bass fishing. You get the early topwater bite. And then you go fish for crappie for the next hour and a half. And you get something that you can take back to the VRBO and fry up. and you caught some bass in the morning. Do you do combo trips like that if that's what people want to do?
Absolutely. And now would be the time to do that because you could just go out and throw a jerk bait and probably catch your limit of both. So kind of prime.
Yeah. One of the other things that we haven't touched on is we're talking largemouth and spotted bass. Lake of the Ozarks, not a smallmouth bass factory, but a lot of aggressive spotted bass too. So I know there's some guys that's on your bucket list to catch spots, to catch a bunch of spots, to see how those things school up and relate. Lake of the Ozarks is a really good way to catch a lot of decent spotted bass.
Yeah, a lot of good ones. I had a trip yesterday. We caught largemouth, almost 6 pounds, and a spot right at 4. So
that's a big spot, dude.
It is a big spot.
They're an Ozark spot, not a Coosa spot, not one of those West Coast spots. It's a completely different, I think, a different class of fish.
It's an awesome fish. You can tell it's an old fish, been in there a long time. It's kind of, I told the kid when he caught it, I'm like, man, this is a rare fish. You're not going to see a lot of these, throughout the course of the year. So, but yeah, it was an awesome fish, and we do have a lot of them.
All right. Lake of the Ozarks, the only lake that you guide on, or you also expand to area lakes too?
Yeah. So last year we had like an off limits, so
right, for the Bassmaster Open that was on it.
I did some of the other lakes around here, but so we have Truman Lake is about little over an hour from me, and Pomme de Terre Lake is about an hour from me. So, I get a lot of repeat clients, and they usually ask me to, kind of mix it up every once in a while. And I have no problem doing that. It's fun for me to kind of go to these other lakes as well. I grew up fishing Truman Lake, and so it's always going to be one of my favorite lakes. And so I enjoy going down there. And then Pomme de Terre is kind of fun. They've actually got muskies over there, and they usually bite as well. So, and I say that the last time I went over there, I took my girlfriend and was promising her that she's going to catch a muskie. I'm like, we always catch them. We catch them every time. And of course we didn't, but we usually do. And it's a fun lake, phenomenal bass fishery. And, if you're throwing a plopper or something big like that, there's a chance you might catch a muskie. So
you've heard of the Pommy Special, right?
I own a couple.
All right. You gonna kill me if I show that? So that's it right there. That's old school. And a little known fact for those who don't know, it's called that because it was designed for that lake. It's a hybrid short arm spinner bait, and if you know what you're doing, you fish it like a buzz bait. Bloop 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 bloop. Hasn't been made for 40 years. But
yeah, they got. I think they call it that because it has the wire arm on the front.
Yeah, so the wire arm on it is because of the muskie that were in Pomme de Terre would just bite you off on that. So that's why it's got that little extra wire on there, and it's called the Pommy Special.
Yeah, pretty awesome bait.
Doesn't work nearly as good as it used to, does it, Casey?
I don't know.
Dude, I'm having trouble finding them where the hooks aren't starting to rust out, though.
The hook on it's terrible. That little weed guard, I don't know. It's cool, but yeah. The way the swivel is designed, nice.
Yeah, it is nice. That is a good thing. All right, let's talk. I guess logistics is the word I'm looking at. You're fishing all these guide trips out of your tournament boat, wrap, electronics, like out of your boat that you compete out of every single day. So it's a top of the line tournament bass rig.
Yep. We got all the latest and greatest on there. And I'm about to order some more latest and greatest stuff. I think I'm behind on the.
Yeah. You need to order the greater and the later stuff.
Everybody else has it, dude. When I'm at these tournaments lately, I'm like, oh, God, like I'm sponsored by Garmin and I don't even have this stuff.
So. And then rods and reels. If you, like you said, I think he says at the beginning, you want to bring your own, you can bring your own things. If not, you supply high-end bait casting and spinning, rods, reels, baits, the whole 9 yards, kind of just a case-by-case basis.
Yep. So you just tell me what you want to do. If you want to use your own equipment, I always tell them, if you got a rod or reel you're comfortable with, bring it. But I got you covered. I got everything that you need. Baits, rods, lures, sunscreen, couple snacks, waters, whatever. So we're ready to go.
All right. For more information on this, you can go to Casey Scanlon, Scanlon fishing.com. It's kind of a mixture of your tournaments and that it talks about your Elite Ozark Guide service. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, that's a mouthful. I need to shorten that up a little bit.
It is. I actually did some reading. You have on here, you're talking about bassrankings.com. I was bummed when that went away. That was like one of the coolest websites ever.
There was a lot of fun websites back in the day. So yeah, I did like that one.
There is. You could like if you were sitting at a bar and some dude was telling you how he's like an all-star, you could literally look him up and it would tell like every tournament he's ever fished, regardless of what level it is and what he's done, and be like, yeah, you're full of smoke. But more information on you. Obviously have the guide trips pulled up. Cost wise, I know this kind of varies right here. Are these rates accurate on here?
I think I've upped it. We're at about $100 an hour. So
okay.
Up to 2 people. We take 3 people if you got it. So I'm pretty easy to work with. So
okay,
call me and we'll figure out a way to get out there.
So you could do a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's not either just a 4 or an 8, like a half or a full day. You can kind of customize it around your schedule for the weekend or the week.
Yeah, I'll let them do that as long as I don't have, it's harder to do like this time of year. No problem doing it now. Later in the year when I start getting phone calls, it's nice to, because I could do 2 or 3 in a day if I really, really wanted to. But so, it's nice to know to not leave it so open-ended. Sometimes I just can't do it, but I try to do that for them. Like, hey, if they're biting, we can stay out a couple extra hours. You know what I mean?
Your phone number is on that. I'll also link this website in the YouTube and the iTunes description. Email is still caseyscanlon@hotmail.com. If you guys have questions or want some more information on getting out on the famous Lake of the Ozarks. I think it's one of the best weekend getaway trips that you could do pretty much any time of the year. It's really cool now because it's not super crowded, but even during the summer, if you've got a family that wants to, experience some really fun stuff, there's a bunch of stuff in the area, and then you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone by getting out early in the morning, catching some bass, and pretty much be back before the rest of the family is up and about. You get a lot of guys who do that who are like, man, we're just here for the weekend, but it's awesome. I get to catch some before everyone's even up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a regular deal. So we pick them up at the dock super early and they're back about breakfast time. So it works out for everybody.
If you were to do your ideal trip, time of the year, species, what are you using? Like the number one day, like if you could be on Lake of the Ozarks and hire yourself as a guide, what's the ultimate?
Honestly, I'd want to come late May and June. Big fish, they're biting, they're hungry, and you can fish shallow or deep, but some of those real memorable days, you're going to pull up on, a deep spot, throw a big jig, worm, crankbait, something like that, and catch a ton of fish and a lot of big ones. So, if they're generating some water here in May and June, it's going to be lights out. That's
awesome. Anything else that you feel necessary to get in here? I feel like that's a pretty good rundown of guiding on Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah, no, it was good. Great lake, fun place to visit, whether you're fishing or not. A lot of stuff to do here for the family. And if you want to go fishing, we can make the trip is shorter or as long as you want. Variety of species here to target, and they're typically biting.
And he will clean your crappie. You heard it here, folks.
I shouldn't advertise that too much. I'll be doing a lot of here.
Will you butterfly them and scale them, or are we just talking fillets here?
Yeah, we're just filleting them, just cutting them, cutting the rib cages out of them, and sending them on their way. So, but pretty easy to do. I got the Bubba knife down. So.
You could have said no. I gave you the opportunity.
Honestly, a lot of the guys, I think, like doing it themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of times they'll bring like a cooler, and I think they, if it's, especially if it's a more than one guy, I think they kind of make a little project out of it. But you know what? If you got them, I'll clean a few of them for you for sure.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it, man.
Yep, no problem. Thanks, Matt.
All right, see ya. All right, that is Casey Scanlon. If you couldn't tell it there, also a good dude, very into like educating and talking his way through. He's been out there a long time on Lake of the Ozarks. Always spends a ton of time on the water, and a fun day. Like I said, if you've never been to Lake of the Ozarks, like we've gone coast to coast. This is kind of the first kind of central part of the country that we've covered on Guide Day. A little bit touristy, especially during the summer. If you are planning on bringing your own boat down there during the summer and then fishing around on that, it's dangerous. Like you don't want to be on a bass boat on that in the middle of the day in the summer. Like Casey said, there's some no wake areas. There's some places upriver that you can get around on, but like boat ramps and the main lake and the whole thing is chaos. But he's found a way to make a good living out of it. Multiple species. The crappie, I've experienced a crappie at Lake of the Ozarks. They're awesome fish as well too. So, all right. That is this episode of Guide Day with Casey Scanlon. Like I said, if you have any more information or want more information on that, all of his information is in the bio. We will be back Monday with a live BTL show. There's some music. All right. We'll catch everybody then. See ya.